So we're going to talk about consumer 3D printing, or 3D printing for the people. Let me start by asking you, how many of you have used a 3D printer? Okay. How many of you own a 3D printer?
Wow.
How many of you want a 3D printer? That's what we're talking about. There we go. All right. When want exceeds. So I want to kind of, because we're here to talk about innovation, I want us to broaden the context a little bit. When we think of 3D printing, I think we can learn some lessons from the laser printer. And if you remember, the laser printer actually grows out of Xerox PARC in the Valley. But in 1985, the Apple LaserWriter, and maybe a little before after, the HP LaserJet come about. And, it's about a $30,000 device. It's not consumer grade initially. It's pretty expensive, but it's pretty powerful, and it catches the attention of a lot of people. It certainly, in the long run, disrupted the printing business. It really completely made obsolete things like typesetting equipment, and it made the conventional analog print shop really put them out of business. But during that same time, there were about three other effects of the laser printer. One, it sold a lot of Apple computers because people saw through getting the output from a laser printer made them want a computer to generate that. Second, it created a whole new class of application software, page layout software, such as Aldus PageMaker. You might remember that. It's no longer around, really. But it was the tool people needed to start designing their own brochures and newsletters. Interestingly, O'Reilly Media starts in 1985 printing books and doing computer manuals because of technology like this. Becomes affordable. It can be something in a small group, and we can kind of do it ourselves. So particularly, I think those are the sort of immediate things. One other thing, though, that you might not remember, but we probably all take for granted now, we needed a standardized file format for these printers. And it led to, HP had their version, but the one that won was PostScript. And Adobe really starts as a company out of this. John Warnock worked at Xerox. And so something almost like completely out of the blue, and Adobe certainly is still around. But the other, I think, effect of the laser printer was to give rise to creatives that brought them to the computing as a platform. And both, I think, importantly, professionals and consumers became users of this. There was a lower barrier to entry. And what did people do? They complained that the quality of graphic design was lowering, everything you saw was crap because anybody could do it. And there's truth in that. But it was also democratic. And so we saw a growth in tools, in services, consulting businesses grow up out of this rise. And I think this was a whole audience that repositioned themselves when the web comes around. Instead of doing print pages, you're doing web pages. And all that talent, in a sense, can be traced back to the laser printer. So the laser printer, the 3D printer, is one form of additive manufacturing. I think it's important to note that it's not new. 3D printing, this is the original patent. One of our panelists is from 3D Systems, and Charles Hull actually owns the first patent on it. And so it's 1986. But it's been around in various forms in commercial industrial applications for a good number of years. And a lot of some of the things you see here are created using industrial printers. What I think we've seen, that's new here is personal fabrication. Being able to use this just like the laser printer in a small group or even at home. So one of the origins of this is the Reprap Project, an open source project. It had the sort of audacious idea that you could build a machine that would replicate itself, be able to build other machines. And it really led to DIY 3D printers as kits, leading to things like MakerBot. And I think MakerBot I know from doing Maker Faire, I kept inviting Reprap to show up, and they could never get their act together and actually show up with a printer. And I think MakerBot came along and figured out some of the problems to make that more of a hobbyist technology. But I think not just with 3D printers, but I think a range of things is giving rise to makers as a new audience, a new set of people that will be using these tools for creative expression. And it's creating new businesses in hardware and software that we may be talking about tonight. I think as importantly, that we're not only talking about the tools themselves, but the ecosystem around them, and even the fact that makers are, say, much more connected than the creatives were when they got started. So it's growing faster, and people are learning from each other. That's a copy of Make Magazine. We probably did about 2.5 years ago on the Desktop Factory as an idea here. So in the panel tonight, I hope we will be looking at some of these issues. Will 3D printing as a device be the thing that is really the winner here? Or will it be as a service? Which will have more users? We could probably guess that they might coexist. But is it ultimately a business that an HP should be in? Or is it more like an Amazon, where you don't really care how something is made, and you just click a button and it shows up on your doorstep? What kind of barriers and breakthroughs lie ahead? Are there new technologies ahead of us? Are there new ways of dealing with things like materials? We're using ABS plastic and melting it. One of the things I meant to mention, if you don't have an understanding of 3D printing, there's a couple of 8th graders over here, Riley and his friend, who can explain it to you in great detail. They're exemplars. They came to Maker Faire last year, saw 3D printers, and now they practically have their own little business doing it. So one of the rules in new technologies is look for the youngest adopters. It's fascinating, but if you think of it and you're trying to understand, think of cake decorating. If you've ever had a pastry sack with an extruder or a fit on the end, and you're squeezing it, and you're putting dots around that. That is essentially what a 3D printer is doing, but it's doing it in a very precise way, in a computer-controlled fashion that is laying those dots down in great numbers. Now, what a lot of people don't understand that haven't used a 3D printer is that it's slow. It takes a while to create an object. Some of the objects, well, they're all gone right now, but some of the ones you see out here might have taken several hours. We wouldn't have been too happy if our first printers took that long. Another is resolution. Can you get, at this consumer level, the kind of resolution in some of the objects you see here being produced at an industrial level? So those are some of the barriers and breakthroughs that I think we want to talk about. What are the business opportunities? We'll come to that sort of at the end. If you're thinking about this as an area for innovation, what's locked down? What's open for grabs? In fact, what are we missing? Just like Adobe, just like PageMaker. Those are the opportunities that came out of an ecosystem, and someone saw that opportunity and created a company. So to give a framing a little bit more in depth of a particular company in this space, we're going to have the CEO and founder of Shapeways, and I've got to look at his name, Peter Y. Marshausen. Is that good enough? From New York-based Shapeways, who I think has been around a couple of years, but still considers themselves a startup. So if you're using tools, even stuff like Gonzalo will be showing you from Autodesk, and you want to print something, but you don't have a 3D printer, you can have Shapeways print it for you. So he'll be talking about their business model and, in a sense, how do they get customers and what the future looks for them. So, Peter?
All right. Thank you, Dale. So, 3D printers. A little bit of a questionnaire. I've seen how many people here already have a printer or want one. interested to know, anyone knows Shapeways already? All right, well, so before we dive into the, the bits and bytes, and I understand everybody wants to own such a machine, I think it's very interesting to understand why. Why do we want to use these machines? Why do we want to own them? Why are so many people interested in this space, and why is this accelerating so fast? And I think if you look at the things that we use in our daily lives, like laptops or indeed cars, they're all made by this really great process called mass manufacturing, and that has brought us in in the age we're now, where basically all the things we need, all the things we want, we can buy, but they're all mass manufactured, because this is the most efficient process that we have come up with to make products we want. But there is a problem with those mass manufactured products. They all look the same, right? They're boring. So what we all do, if you just have to look around you to see that, is we customize. People want to, show that it is their product, it's their thing, especially things we care about, like our laptop or our cars. Some people go to real extremes. The problem with this customization of existing products is, of course, it's after the fact, so it's inherent, it's probably very inefficient in that sense. And second, it's expensive. If you really count what it would cost to build a custom car, then probably nobody wants to buy it. You want to make it yourself, perhaps, but not buy it. So understanding that we have this need of products that we care about, that we want to be involved in them, how do we solve that? Well, we used to know how to do that. Before the Industrial Revolution, everything was made by hand. And by definition, those products were pretty much all unique. My grandfather was a carpenter, and he made the kitchen for my grandma. He built it when they married, and they were still using it when I remember that they were living in that house. That's the downside of custom-made stuff. That's what we know. It's expensive, right? So how do we combine what we've learned in the age of mass manufacturing with what we already knew in the age of making things by hand? How do we make things personal? How do we make personal manufacturing happening? I think we know already. We have the technology already. We can use 3D printers to do that. 3D printers can take things from the digital realm directly into the physical, and you can produce things with NS1, single unit production, as efficient as you can do 1,000 or 1,000,000 copies. So people can be involved in the products they buy. Indeed, they can design them themselves. Okay? And that makes people happy. I drink every morning my coffee from a 3D printed coffee mug, printed in ceramics. And that is possible today. And that costed me around $30 to make. It's not incredibly expensive anymore. We can do that. And that makes me happy. I don't know what part of it, maybe the coffee, but who knows. So Shapeways is basically the place for anyone to make whatever they want. And going into the business model a little bit, how does that work and what are the advantages? Is first of all, and we all realize that, is that if you are a designer, if you know how to use 3D software, since we're asking, I'm really interested to know, whom in the audience knows how to use 3D software? Wow, that's an amazing number. So that's telling perhaps for the audience. And maybe it's good for you. But, I tried the same thing on the street in New York, and, the outcome was kind of different. So, but still, for you guys who know how to use 3D software, it's great. You can use a 3D printer, you can use services like Shapeways, upload your file, and you can print it. But what if you don't know how to do that? Well, or actually, if you know, you can open a shop at Shapeways, and using that shop, you can directly market your product to a worldwide audience. And people who don't know how to use 3D software can come and buy it. One of the first things that was a problem for me when I started Shapeways, when I wanted to test our service, is where do I get a printable 3D model? And it took me a while to get one. And when we had 3, I was happy. But the most important, I think, is that working together with designers, people who know how to make products, real products, people who don't know how to do that can work together on enabling platforms. And that's, if we're going into what Dale just said, owning one yourself, I think one of the interesting problems to solve is the content problem. You know what you want, but how do you get what you want? even though the technology exists, how do we enable people to use the technology? I mean, one of the things to think of is the iPod and iTunes, right? I mean, if I remember correctly, the iPod was launched before iTunes, but it was iTunes that made the iPod successful. So, you know, what's the iTunes then perhaps for 3D printing? I don't know. Or maybe I do. So in the end, if you have enabling tools, then everybody can customize at least. You know, you can be involved in the products you buy. This is on the web technology. WebGL already enables people to go very far and make really interesting experiences where you can make your own vase or your own coffee cup. That's how I did it, because I don't know how to use 3D software, surprisingly enough. Or at least not good enough. So what are the advantages from a business perspective of these enabling platforms? Well, one of them is that the time to market goes almost to zero. An example is here is an iPad cover. I can still remember on a Friday in 2010, Apple launched the iPad. And on Monday, we already had a cover on Shapeways for people to buy. This designer, who was from Finland, he bought one of those iPads and he designed his own cover and he started selling it. He didn't have any cooperation from Apple, he did it on himself, but because his time to market was almost zero, he could launch that product 4 days after the iPad was launched. Another thing that will happen is because we're not going to produce big numbers anymore, we're producing only when people need it, customer feedback can be used instantaneously because the time to product market is zero. If you get feedback, you can improve the product and then you can launch it again. And in that way, the product gets better much quicker because feedback can be used immediately if you so want. And if you don't, then someone else will, and they will be better. And in that way, we've seen already products go through 20 or 30 iterations within a year, and people get more and more successful. They even have several versions that people would want. And in that way, we really get the products we want. And the risk of doing it is also going to zero. I mean, with mass production, you need to find a manufacturer, you need to get the money to make it, then you find a retail channel, whatever it is, online or offline, and then you sell it to a worldwide audience, perhaps. But if it doesn't sell, or there is a defect, then the risk is all yours. With 3D printing, you don't have that problem anymore. You sell only if people buy. If you don't, you think about what you did wrong and you try again. And there are already big success stories where people have sold so many units that they're making reasonable money. You know, the big shop owners at Shapeways make at around $4,000 or $5,000 on every month. So what do people make? Well, things they care about. What do people care about? For instance, jewelry, or home deco stuff. Or, I'm more passionate about this one, you know, remote-controlled aircrafts. Strand-based, we have one here. A really amazing thing that a Dutch designer made, and some students scaled it down to a size that you can print, and it's powered by wind, it walks. So Shapeways is a community of creativity. You know, we have over 150,000 members, and they're really active. Last year, we made over 750,000 products already, and I think it's only the beginning. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Back to you.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a seat. Okay. Well, thank you, Peter. I think I'm going to now ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and say a bit about your context here and what you and your company do and what you're interested in here. Rajiv, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Rajiv Kulkarni. I've been quite fortunate enough to have been in 3D printing for over the last 2 decades. The first patent that you saw there was my boss, Chuck Hull. And so I've been involved in creating, inventing 3D printing for the last 20 years. So every 3D printing platform that you see, except for the Z printers, is something that we've created as part of 3D systems. We are the world's largest 3D printing company at about $300 million in revenue. And we have installed our printers in more than 120 different verticals and applications. The car you drive, the toys you use, the hearing aids that you wear, the aligners that you use, all the stuff uses our printers to do 3D printing. So we've been very successful as part of the industrial segment in applying 3D printing technology to industrial products. Just recently, we started a new business unit for the consumer products. The cubes that you see there are our first product to kind of launch the consumer strategy along with Cubify, which is the platform that gets this to 8-year-old kids, 10-year-old kids who can start using 3D printing now. So I lead the business unit now, and that's my role at 3D Systems.
Okay. Gonzalo?
Hello, my name is Gonzalo Martinez. I work for Autodesk. I'm the Director of Strategic Research, and I'm very fortunate as Rajiv because I get to play with technology all day long. And one of the coolest things that I've been playing for the last, I will say, 3.5 years, 4 years is about 3D printing and all the software that we at Autodesk we are developing to make this industry more accessible to all of you guys. And the other aspect that I've been looking heavily is what we call reality capture, being able to take picture from a camera and build a 3-dimensional model that you can bring to our software, change, modify, and if you want to 3D print. So we are developing out of this very strong strategies to help you as a consumer to have access to these technologies that was really hard to access in the past, and now you have a very interesting future to come.
Okay. And Philip?
Hi, yeah. My name is Phillip Del Amor. I'm the director of the digital studio at the London College of Fashion. So I've been working in this space of 3D printing for about 10 years now. So it really comes as a new tool for designers. And I guess from a fashion perspective, what we've been doing is exploring, as any designer does, new tools that come to us. So we're really interested in the design freedom it gives us, the ability to customize products to people, and a new way of creating unique objects for people.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to ask a few questions, and I invite you to use the number up in the right-hand corner to text questions to us, and we will look through them, and I get them somehow magically on the iPad, and we'll ask them. But initially, we're going to do about 20 minutes here just among ourselves, and then we'll start weaving questions. But if you get an idea, let me start with you, Peter. What happens on your end when I press a button in my web browser that says print to Shapeways? What actually happens?
All right, that's quite a process that we'll start after that. The good thing is when you hit the button print, we already know that the file is printable. And that's actually where it starts, where you either the designer of the shop that you buy from or you yourself upload a file. We first of all check whether the file is a printable object. If not, we can help and fix it. And then we analyze in what material we can manufacture it, which is an amazing breakthrough that we can now see whether we can make it in a certain material. Then when you buy it, we schedule it based on the material you choose to buy it in with a certain supplier of ours or in our own capacity that we have now in the Netherlands, and we're building one in New York City as well. After it's scheduled, within 24 hours, your part will go into production. It takes up to 24 hours before the production is done. It needs to cool down in some cases, or in some cases it doesn't. Then it needs to be sorted, post-produced. Sometimes it needs to be polished or maybe gold-plated. And after all of that is done, it's put in a box and shipped to you. In some cases, we do that in 4 days. We guarantee we deliver the product to you in 10 days.
How much of that process is automated?
More than when we started, but not as much as we would have liked. To give you more of a business answer here, our cost of labor, if it was $1 July last year, it's now 19 cents. So we reduced it by a factor of 5. We're not happy. We want to reduce it a lot more. The whole digital intake process to the printer is now almost automated. And we know how to do the rest, and we will complete that. And then the interesting bit of sorting and post-production and packing needs to be automated. Why? Because it's error-prone, and it also costs money. And one of the goals that Shapeways clearly has in its vision is to make 3D printing as accessible as possible for everybody. So anyone can get whatever they want.
Can I print a $3 item as well as a $30 item?
Absolutely. There are things of 10 cents on our side.
Right. But don't you lose money on that?
Not really. Because the behavior that we see is that people typically still buy on average, something like that is worth, an order is $10 and then it's okay.
All right, well, it's good to get a little bit of background. Maybe we'll come back to some of this in a minute. But let me just start. I think one of the big news items today was Stratasys and Objet is an Israeli company, and where's Stratasys in?
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, that's what I thought, Minnesota. So they combined to form a large 3D printing. So Ajay, I thought, 3D Systems has bought up a lot of smaller, I guess, and then Z Corp as a 3D printer. A lot of consolidation we're seeing on here. Why do you think this is happening right now?
Well, I mean, I can talk for ourselves. I mean, I can't talk for them. But we've acquired about 26 companies in the last 30 months with the sole goal of we want to pursue a business model that is content to print. And by content to print means if you look at CAD packages today, they're extremely complex CAD packages where somebody like an 8-year-old kid or a 10-year-old kid cannot possibly comprehend even using that CAD package to design models and so forth. So we are pursuing a strategy where we want to empower elementary school kids, middle school kids with devices and tools that they can bring the create and make process in their house. That cube printer has one button on it. It's called print. There's nothing else to it. My 8-year-old boy and my 10-year-old boy were the ones who were my focus group. I used to bring it home, lay it in front of them, and say, print. Tell me what's wrong. And they used to give me feedback, and that's how we came up with the printer that there is. All these companies that we're acquiring is to really pursue a strategy where we can create content creation, digital capture, as well as the workflow process that Peter just described, and getting a printer into the homes and living rooms of people, seamless, easy, and get rid of all expert user friction out of the process. Okay. And you need different elements for it.
Okay. So Gonzalo, I mean, Autodesk has a similar, I mean, you're one of the generators of the complex CAD software, but you're also creating a consumer division now, which has, simpler to use software. So I mean, my question for you is software really the driver for adoption here, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, these machines will not work if they don't get a 3D dimensional model itself. I mean, you have to feed them with those 3-dimensional model. And, I concur with Rajiv, what he said, some of the CAD software in the industry are very in a professional level, expensive, difficult to use. You have to be a very trained professional to use it. So we have some of this stuff at Autodesk, very, very professional level. But about 2 years ago, we started a new group we call the consumer group at Autodesk. And the purpose of the consumer group was to unleash the power of, a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, to be able to access this software at home and be able to do things that they never thought. They were building things in 3D, and by the way, ready to 3D print. So our goal in the consumer is to completely unleash the imagination of people who wants to create things, have access to this very, very simplistic software that you will require pretty much close to zero training, and by the way, for free. That you can install in your system, run it, and once you have your designs and wanted to send it to Shapeways, you will be able to do it. You want to have a printer at home, be able to do it, you also will be able to perform that. So we really want to change, and we wanted to democratize this technology for all of you guys.
But how are you going to make money?
Later.
which is why you need the complete business model, which is content to print. Because once you control the entire process, then there are different ways to make money within that process. And go ahead.
Yeah, and out of this, I mean, we do very well. I mean, we on the professional side, we have done fantastic. And what we wanted to do is unleash the power. Then later we're going to see what we're going to do. Later might be some applications that are going to be more sophisticated that, through the Apple Store, you will be able to purchase for $1.99 or $3 or something like that. But our purpose right now is to unleash the power, because I think not only it's going to change the way we conceive things, but the way we customize things in the future. And it's almost like an industrial revolution all over again, but more on a customized level. And we want to be part of that as well.
But it seems like both of you have, possibly you're cannibalizing your, professional
Not
tools
really.
business.
It's actually helping our industrial business because the awareness is spreading so much among, all mom and dads who are going to use these printers go to work and have professional jobs, and they're going to learn about 3D printing through this and apply that into their professional lives, whatever that is. And the key here is kids who are from 8 to 18, they really don't want to design from scratch. They want to be personalizing, customizing, individualizing whatever they print. So something like this nano band, if you can download this, put your name on it, put your design on it, put your face on it, and print this, the kids are extremely happy with that. And that's what they want to do. They don't want to design this nano band from scratch. And that's where the opportunity is, because you have all these professionals. There are 9 million CAD users in the world at any given point. And that market's not increasing too much. But if you open up tools like what he's saying and what I'm saying is, if you open up customization and personalization tools, you've opened up such a big opportunity for 3D printing as well as 3D creation and make.
In fact, I'll give you an example. I do a lot of 3D printing, and I've been giving some of the 3D print samples to my son, which is 11 years old. He goes to school and shows all this stuff. Look at what my daddy did for me and all this stuff, and everybody gets fascinated. I got a call from the school saying, you need to come here and explain us about this 3D printer, because all the kids want to learn how to use this stuff. So this is the thing that we're really trying to encourage how you make.
I think it's a fascinating, when I asked all of you, do you want a 3D printer? I think one of the phenomena is we want one. We don't know quite what to do with it yet, but we still want one. But that's exactly what happened with the early personal computers. You had people wanting to build one to figure out what to do with a personal computer. And but you see this as kids, and it has this sort of sex appeal, for lack of a better term. It strikes kids' imaginations, and I find that pretty powerful.
It gives hope.
Right.
A kid can wake up with an idea in the morning, and before he goes to bed, he'll have a part in his hand where he's realized the idea. And that is empowerment, and that is so powerful that it's going to change the way how kids grow up and create.
Let me ask Phillip, draw you in here a bit, is I think one of the, it's interesting to see the Converse shoes over there and other things that we might not normally think of as 3D printed objects. But, in the world of design, what do you see the impact of 3D printers?
Well, I guess if you think about the Converse shoes that you're seeing, what you're able to do is realize something really quickly in a prototyping sense that gives you a really good idea in the physical world. Now, before, you might be designing that you might be sketching, or you might be designing on a CAD system, but you can't actually feel it, hold it in your hand. You can't sit down with somebody and talk about it. And as a communication tool, it's fantastic to be able to get that stuff out of the screen and bring it into the real world as quickly as you can. And I think that's one of the key things. It's like you have a conversation object, and that stimulates design and progress. And you've got an undo button. Yeah? Before, if you built something, if you hand carved something and you think, actually, I've got to change that, you've got to start from scratch over again. Here, you've got the opportunity to say, well, actually, I just need to tweak this piece, and I can pop another one out, and then we can talk about that.
Yeah. Let me ask, one of the potential markets that might grow out of this is a design market, right? Just as you show that watch. Now, one of the interesting things we see things like Thingiverse and others. There are libraries, and since Shapeways is a library of things you can find and modify in different ways. Do you think there'll be a consumer market driven by design professionals, in a sense, or of well-designed 3D objects?
I think that's where co-design, where collaborative design comes in. I think people want, you'll always have the homemaker, the hobbyist, the crafter, the people who want to make their own stuff. But also you want people who want to buy a connoisseurship or an authorship you want to associate with a designer. And I think we're going to see new co-design spaces evolve, where you'll be able to go into a design space and perhaps tweak, as we saw with Shapeways, something that's been created by a designer, but they're going to design really the space of design. So it's that kind of design of design. They'll design the parameters that you can tweak that object within, so that you're actually, you're co-authoring an object. You're buying a whatever, a Ferrari or a Gucci or whatever, but it's your Gucci, your Ferrari.
Right. What's the experience in the fashion world around protecting designs? And I mean, certainly somebody says, if I'm going to put this up in Thingiverse, it's not my design anymore, and everybody's going to download it and it's going to propagate. What do you think about that?
The fashion industry is used to being ripped off because that's what happens every day. And the strategy of the design world is just keep innovating and making new products. You can't protect. You have certain design rights and design protections, but it's a very fluid and flexible market. And anyone can walk into a store, buy something, reverse engineer it, and make a copy.
I'll give you an example on that. We acquired a company called Freedom of Creation last year, and they make really high-end designs that are only 3D printable, and they're in every world art museums and so forth. On Cubify, they have about 20,000 designs, and we are opening that all up for the public. And the designers came to us and said, that's what we want to do. We want to open up our designs so that anybody can download their design and print it on a Cube or any other printer that they have. It's a revenue source for us, but it's as well as it kind of spreads their creativity into all kinds of areas, because they truly believe is patent copyright is okay, but truly to stay innovative, you just have to keep creating new stuff, which is cool and innovative.
Yeah.
So
Let me just go on to another thing. Because are you happy with the state of consumer 3D printing right now?
No, it sucks. It's pretty bad. I mean, just to give, because we have been using the professional system, and they're really remarkable, but they're really expensive. So, it comes to a question about what materials you can support. I mean, yeah, you can print any shape, but is that the material that you want? Is that the resolution? So on the consumer level, my analysis is pretty much as this. You guys remember the dot matrix, 150 dpi? That's what you have for 3D printer at the consumer level today, okay? You wanna go to a higher resolution, better material, things like that, the price goes dramatically up. So, how all these things gonna coexist? There's the printers that you can do very inexpensive, low resolution, affordable, and there are the printers that can do much better job, maybe at a company specialized on that. So for instance, if I wanna print a shoe, and I wanna customize that shoe, but I wanted to make sure, on the customization that it can be able to check my balance distribution, okay? Scan my right foot, my left foot. It came out with a design, pretty determined design, and I wanted to play tennis, and I want to be able to choose that. The printer is going to be able to print that. It's being built, but it's a very customized thing. So kind of, in order to protect you, some of the company will be able to say, yeah, you can play with the design, but in order to print it will be only on my system itself.
So just let me go to the Shapeways side, because it's kind of this model in some ways that there's tiers of quality here. Yep. And I might, in some ways what we're seeing in this space is a prototyping revolution, that you can create one of a thing. But when you want to get to thousands of something, you need speed, you need lots of things here. Yep. Is Shapeways going to be able to follow someone who can make a couple of something but wants to make 10,000 of something?
Yeah, sure, we can. I mean, it's already happening. One of the most successful...
It's like a printer. We'd send my magazine off to a printer. I can use my office equipment to create galleys, but when I want to create a lot of them, it goes off somewhere else.
Yeah, perhaps, but the cool thing about 3D printing, and I have to disagree a little bit, I'm going to say it, that it sucks, the consumer experience at this moment. I don't think it's that. I think we can improve vastly, yes. But I think if you look at what you can already do with materials like ceramic, stainless steel, silver, people can make very meaningful things. And just yet, someone came up to us and said, I printed my wedding ring. I mean, why is the customer experience not good there? I'm sure that the person in question was really happy with that. So next to that, we do run thousands. Nervous systems, designers use Shapeways, and they're very successful and building the same thing. But I think it defies the purpose of 3D printing in a sense that 3D printing makes it possible to make different things. And why not have a bracelet that is specifically made for you, just like what you just said is, your name on it or something special, an iPhone case with a sound on it, whatever.
One thing is, you're asking the wrong people this question, I think. Where's Riley? Where's Riley sitting? Can you stand? The point is, he's a kid who stands behind my booth, and he talks about 3D printing. I'm walking around talking to other people, but he's not our employee. He's just a fan of our technology. And he stands behind the booth, and I let him talk about everything he wants to talk about without worrying about anything. Why is that? Because he's my consumer, and he's extremely happy with the 3D printing today. And this is where it needs to start. It needs to start at that age, not the people here right now.
But let me ask you specifically. See, he's younger and can wait for a 3D printer to come out. We're older.
We want stuff now.
We want stuff now.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
like,
Agree.
what's driving speed in this? Will we see a faster 3D printer?
I mean, I'm surprised you're saying this, by the way.
We absolutely will drive speed. Cost will come down.
Are you increasing your R&D budget then?
Look, you know,
That would be an interesting comment from you. I mean, you're working for 20 years in this industry.
Yeah.
Are you going to make a commitment? You're the biggest company in 3D printing. Can you tell us and everybody here that you're raising your R&D budget to make those printers better, the home printer?
We absolutely want to make them better.
Okay, cool.
There's no question about it.
Okay.
Because
you know, and I have the same question. You know, one of the things that I found missing in this industry is the supply of different materials, be able to do composites and things like that. So, you know, I've been asked to all of you guys manufacturers, how many people you have doing R&D in the material science? And it's minimum, the amount. So in order to move this industry to the next level, you have to make a breakthrough in the material science. And once you do that, you're going to see an explosion of different things that we can do with these machines.
Well, I
look,
go.
3-4 years ago, the cheapest printer was $15,000, $10,000. Today, you have a printer at $1,000, right? That prints equal quality parts. This is only going to improve. And you have the open source community that has completely exploded at this point. You have 150 people sitting here hearing about 3D printing for the first time, perhaps, and they're going to take it in multiple directions. This is only going to improve going forward. There is no question about it. It's just been a small community improving 3D printing over the last 20 years, and now it's completely going into a consumer level where everybody's going to get involved. And when everybody gets involved, everything is going to improve. The quality will improve, the speed will improve, the cost will come down.
It might be, but the throughput is sort of a problem. Let me ask you this way. If you had a high school class and they had a couple $1,000s, would you put it into a laser cutter or a 3D printer?
It really depends the project. I mean, it depends the project, but you know, I like the concept of the 3D printer is kind of training them for the future, because this is a technology that they will be able to consume. But we need to accelerate that. We need at the consumer level to accelerate that aspect. And and I've been talking with every 3D printer manufacturer, you know, and they are all using the same patterns and trying to score on the same patterns. And you have all the new makers of 3D printers, you know, they're all based in the same technology. What we need this industry is to fuel some money to move to the next level, because once we hit the next level, it's going to be very different the way we manufacture.
So I hear this. I mean, this is a pretty important thing.
By the way, we at Autodesk, we are fueling in terms of software everything you need to make that happen. We are dying to wait for the consumer level printer that he have a reasonable resolution and a reasonable price.
Okay. So let me switch to some of the questions coming in from the audience. Patents. We have both expiring patents around 3D printing, but we also have some key patents in this space. And you know, let me ask you, Peter, because you're not necessarily selling devices, you're using them. Did the patents affect your business in any way, in terms of what you think innovation is happening in the 3D printer space?
Yes, it does, and especially in the 3D printing space. I'm surprised. You know, I'm coming from an open source background, if you like.
Right.
And I'm, you know, just like Gonzalo just said, you know, the patents seem to be a very popular topic in 3D printing space. And actually, what patents should do is promoting innovation. Here, it seems to be slowing down innovation. Just a few days ago, or actually 2 weeks ago, a factory of a company called Evonik had a major accident, and they're the only ones who can make powder for SLS printers. And everybody, you know, you and Shapeways and everybody will be in some way affected by that, because it's the only company that can make that powder because they own a patent, that specific powder. So, and also printers, you know, I think competition is good in the sense that if people, you know, if they start to compete, then the product gets better. You know, people will buy the best product, whatever best is for them. And patents, in this sense, seem to holding it back because you have, a very segmented market at this moment. I would love the acceleration of development of machines and materials, I agree. Both on the low end, if you like, the home printer, but also on even the industrial, the most expensive printers can be 10 times better. I'm waiting and hoping that will happen. I hope that 3D Systems and all the other companies will do that.
And you and I, we have heavily experienced, there's the beautiful part about 3D printing, but there's the part that you need to do support removal. You know, and I call that black hole 3D printing because that takes time. You're dealing with chemicals. And, there's not many who have really found out the best way to do it.
Well, there's technologies that don't use support that you need to remove, right?
Yeah.
I mean, SLS, for instance, which is laser sintering, where you use a powder and a laser. The powder is supporting the model, and when you lift the model out, the powder just falls away. Yeah. So there are, but
I mean more on the consumer.
Yeah.
Sure. Phillip, you were trying to jump in.
Well, yeah, I was just saying that I just wanted to say that while the open source community is going to be able to play with a lot of materials and trial a lot of things, for us, particularly in the sort of design industries, luxury industries, it's the high-end finish, the SLS type machines, which are going to give us those kind of products into the market that we don't have that kind of access to. We can't play with those systems without voiding lots of warranties and things like that.
Yes.
So there's a kind of a disconnect there in
Right, that
terms
the
of the
machine's not
markets.
modifiable.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, though, along this idea of patents, I don't know, it might already be happening, but do you think anybody's patenting the process of creating an object using a 3D printing? 3D print, in other words, the object already exists in a normal way. We saw this in patents when people, or in software, and someone would say, well, here's a piece of software that now works on a network, now works on the internet, and these were kind of different patents.
I'll give you 2 examples. Is all custom hearing aids in the world are printed on our printers, but we don't own the patent for that. The hearing aid manufacturing companies own the patent on printing a hearing aid on an SLA machine, for example. Invisi-Align, the invisible braces, they print 60,000 aligners every day on our printers. They own the patents for that. So these are process patents on creating one specific type of object that they own. But it's a business, after all. They have opened, look, they're in the business of changing lives because aligners went from metal braces to just plastic caps. Hearing aids are perfect fit, completely accurate. Audiologist visit reduced from 4 visits to 1 visit. There's no feedback on the hearing aids, and every customer is happy. I mean, there is tangible benefit that the consumer is getting. And when that happens, if a business has put in R&D money, you asked me to increase my R&D budget. If a business has to sustain themselves, it needs a business model and protection to make sure their IP and their creative asset is protected for some time at least to make money.
Well, the recording industry's had a problem with that.
And nothing is stopping the open source community or anybody else jumping in. There is so much opportunity for innovation here that it doesn't have to be stuck around 3D printers. There is a whole ecosystem from content to print that can be created, and there are abundance of opportunities here that anybody can jump in, and if they wish to protect, you can protect it or make it all available to anybody they want to make it available.
Okay, let me give a couple of questions here. That some we've had, but I think this is an interesting one. What happened to economies of scale? Isn't this sort of doing one thing at a time wasteful?
No, because we're mixing the efficiencies of mass manufacturing with the efficiency of 3D printing, which is suited for NS1. In certain machines already today, you can print, I think our current record stands at about 1,600 products in one run in one machine. And if you do that efficiently, then, if you also automate the processes around that, just as we just discussed, then it's not wasteful. Actually, I would argue it's less wasteful. Because if you think about the whole industry of mass manufacturing, you have supplies that never get sold and they have to be disregarded. You have products that are made that have a flaw in them and therefore cannot be sold and therefore have to be destroyed. And if you think about the fact that if people are involved in the products, they get, kids or adults, everybody, then you might think that they take care of those products longer and don't throw them away as quickly as you do with mass-produced products that you don't care about.
Okay.
If you combine that,
similarly in fashion, right?
Yeah.
A lot of what's made in clothing is
Yeah, I mean, there's some terrible figures if you want to hear them, like a third of all clothes made end up in landfill, or 20% of all wastewater is from dyeing for textile industries. There's some horror stories, and we're a very wasteful industry, quite simply because we overproduce too much of the same stuff. You can walk down a street, and every store has got pretty much the same thing in it.
But some are worried. We're using ABS plastic here. There's other options here, but what about the materials themselves? We kind of mentioned it earlier, but it's sort of as questions come back up here again.
Completely agree with Peter. Is something which is personalized and individualized, people rarely throw away. It's not a commodity that you bought from a store, and that's what we're seeing. People want to keep it on the mantle. People want to keep it on their desk. They want to preserve because it's their own creation. And that's where the beauty of 3D printing is, not from designing from scratch, but really personalizing something and then creating it. In terms of materials, most people start with ABS plastic because that's the most widely used material, and adoption for those products is easy. There is PLA, which is a biodegradable material. We will soon get into edible materials, chocolate and cheese and so forth. So there's a whole lot of area that can be explored here. Again, I say the opportunity there is endless for people who want to jump in, startups who want to jump in. We're willing to work with them. But absolutely, there's a huge opportunity for materials at this point.
Rajiv, while we're with you, I have a question here. What will a Cubify cost in 5 years?
Oh, this printer? Mm-hmm. In 5 years, it should be just like a laser printer. It should be $300, $200 maybe. Absolutely.
Laser printers are higher than that, but yeah, okay, $300.
Yeah.
Okay, let's mark that down somewhere. Let's come back. So I think we can all own one at that point. We can decide whether we want an iPad or a 3D printer. So can we 3D print a car?
Yeah, we do. I mean,
A whole car, engine, wheels.
Yeah, in fact, a fascinating thing, because when I started looking at this industry, all the 3D print samples are pretty small stuff, So we are out of this, decided, let's do something a little bit more challenging. So we decided to 3D print a full-size motorcycle, one of those Orange County motorcycles. And it came out absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And then the following year said, can you do something bigger? And we 3D print a full-size jet engine. And it was really astonishing, and it brings the magnitude of what you can do with.
By the way, these objects are on display in the Autodesk Gallery,
Yes.
One Market, if you really want to see something pretty awesome. Yeah. So it's possible.
Actually, there's a very good example. All Formula One cars, NASCAR cars are fully 3D printed. If you look at fighter planes that are made in the US, 900 parts of the fighter planes are actually 3D printed and put on the planes that fly. So it's been widely used in automobile and aerospace industry as end-use products.
Yeah. So one of the things, as you start mentioning about parts and things that I've kind of been wondering about is why companies aren't, in a sense, publishing catalogs of 3D objects that you might buy and have it,
spare parts.
like spare parts or enhancements or other kinds of things, like enable that modification on top of a platform like a car. To some degree, we don't care that it's 3D printed, but we care if we could modify it, put our name on it, and do other things. Are we seeing that anywhere?
Hardly.
Yeah.
We see the community doing it.
Yeah, independently.
Independently, but companies, they haven't contacted us, so maybe you, but...
I mean, we envision, it's going to be a future that you are in the middle of, a foreign country, I'm from Latin America, and every time a part breaks, you have to order the part, you have to import into the country, pay customs, so the part arrives after 3 weeks. Wouldn't it be nice that part breaks and the manufacturer say, hey, by the way, you can download the design for one-time use and print it locally there, and you have the part ready with you for you.
I agree.
In fact, I've been involved with a company who we're trying to do is a 3D printer at zero gravity, because we want to be able to put a 3D printer in the space station. And the idea, every time that breaks something in the space station, you're not going to have FedEx or DHL coming all the way there. So you need that part there. So there's a lot of business are going to be happening there on very uniqueness opportunities. And that's why we need to keep our minds very open.
So I switch to some questions in here on startups. On one hand, we're actually seeing, through something like Kickstarter, a lot of new 3D printer ideas. $300 3D printer, printer bot, some other things. And it's amazing, if you're not familiar with this, how much money some of these hardware initiatives are raising on Kickstarter, like $1 million. And partly it's interesting to me because it's been difficult to raise money for hardware in places like Silicon Valley. If you have this idea for a next generation printer, it probably wouldn't be Silicon Valley VCs that you're talking to. They're, as they say, they're looking for mobile social. And so it's interesting, and I kind of put that, is there a funding issue here in terms of R&D, in terms of startups, that it's, other than Kickstarter, we're not seeing a lot of investment in this space?
I can tell you from our side, we almost every 2 weeks we're having companies coming to us and say, are you interested to invest on us? Because we are about to come out with a 3D printer. So that's interesting.
We do. We bought 20 startups in the last 2 years. I mean, talk about investing in startups. We bought 20 startups in the last 2
Buying
years.
is not investing.
That's fine. But we,
the thing that my comment that I wanted to make, all of these companies who have come to us, they are based on all patents that they expire and open. And for us, it's if you have something a little bit different, something that is going to innovate, that will be interesting, and that's what we need to be looking. I mean, there's technology, there's the material side, there's the machinery itself. I think if you put some bright minds together to develop some stuff, I mean, you're going to be able to find some amazing stuff. Be able to, on the 3D printer, to be able to put, using an inkjet cartridge, ink on the plastic itself, give you texture, I mean, doing composite material. There's so many ways to do it. But we need people who are willing to look at this seriously and invest the money to do it.
Right.
I want to be very open. If you have good ideas, come talk to us.
He'll buy you. Okay.
I would rephrase it. I would say, this is an amazing opportunity. This is going to explode.
Yep.
If you have plenty of money, if you're an investor, help make this happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So another question here sort of relates. I use the example setting up of PostScript. So the file that's usually sent around is a .stl file, which goes back to stereolithography as its in its origins. But it's not really a robust file format for as a standard for incorporating changes and building on it. Do we see a need for better standards in file formats and interchange?
So we made the format public more than 20 years ago, and I think it's a very limited format. It was good 20 years ago.
Right.
It's not good today, I think. It needs to improve. There is a forum called STL 2.0, which we fully support and we are a part of. And we would love to see new formats come up, which would help kind of elevate this technology to a new level. Absolutely, we support anything.
What would you look for in a new format? I mean, something that's kind of obviously missing.
Missing is like color, material properties, the ability to track data, the ability to share data with information inside it, to make sure multi-materials can be used in parts. All that stuff, which makes a part rich, is all missing. Because what today still is a pure definition of geometry and nothing more. And
I mean, part of the challenge is when you're moving this from one software program or one environment to another, you can't do a whole lot with it if that's your export. Is that right, Gonzalo?
I mean, actually, we do. I mean, we can provide very rich format to some of the 3D printed manufacturers. And we have been talking about that. There's also the initiative about the AMF, the STL 2.0, that already encompass quite a few of these needs for the markets to move to the next level. We are very, very open. As long as the manufacturers are open to work with some of our formats, I mean, we're very, very open.
Okay. This is an organizer. I'm not necessarily getting any new questions on here, so I've had the ones on here. Oh, maybe it's at the top. That might be the problem. Okay. Peter, who funded you is a question, and how difficult was it for you to get funding? And still get funding, perhaps?
Shapeways started within a lifestyle incubator of Philips Electronics in the Netherlands. They were great and had the vision already in 2007 to give us a little bit of money and then some more. In 2010, we successfully made Shapeways an independent company with the investment of Union Square Ventures from New York and Index Ventures from London. At this moment, it's not that hard anymore, although we have to be lots of people know us now, and we have a lot of attention. So it's becoming easier because we already have a bit of a track record. But indeed, as I just said, I would applaud everybody who wants to invest in this space because it's going to help it grow. Where the total 3D printing market today is very small compared to what its potential is, and I think what it will be in 5 years from now. And people who have the guts and the vision to step in today will make a killing.
Can I say specifically on the key for you is to get volume,
Yep.
right? Lots of volume. What is the driver for volume in these services? At least some people I've talked to in the industry, it's like, yeah, we've got things on our service, but people put their initials on it, but we're not seeing a lot of creative, exciting things, or we're not seeing a lot of heavy use here. Are you seeing that in any way?
Yes, because I shared in my presentation real quickly. We produced 750,000 unique parts last year, and we're going to see a lot more this year. The first few months we were exceeding 100,000 products a month. So yes, we see a lot of heavy use. We see increase, more people, and they're starting to, as we, Shapeways is also home to a very active community, and these people, we work together, we inspire each other, and you go from this to that. 2 days ago, I saw the first, and I'm really happy for that because I love that stuff. One of the first hobby rockets being 3D printed and launched. There's a little video on our blog about it. And all that stuff is really.
But if you had $20 million show up, or something, like,
Yep.
where would you be spending it? Like to particularly get more customers in your service, how would you go about doing that?
$20 million to acquire customers. Wow, that is a wealth that is hard to fathom at this moment. What is happening already is that people are starting to find these services themselves. It's spreading like, I think give away a lot of products for free. I would say for quite a time, I would invest in capacity so we could deliver quicker, because that's an interesting challenge. And the second is I would lower prices probably by a significant amount so more people could try. And then it spreads because people want to try. We test that from time to time.
That's a well-tested Silicon Valley model of losing lots of money and hoping you're going to.
Thanks. Thanks.
You're going to make it at the end.
Can I?
Yes, yes.
I'll kind of challenge that, because I think that is thinking within the box we are in at this point. I think what's missing is the experience. What people have to do today is they're watching TV, they're playing video games, then they have to go to a website and figure out what they want to print. That is not integrating that experience into what people are doing already. But if I could be at a TV show and I say, hey, I like that. Can I print this? And you print a button. And from the TV show, you directly get a print. I'm playing a video game and I'm customizing a character and I print that character. Now you've integrated 3D printing and the creation process within an experience that you're already used to. Unless that happens, this is not going to grow exponentially.
But let me ask
that
you,
already exists, right?
Who's
No.
going to capitalize on that? You selling,
I see a lot of
selling, printers to the game companies, or the game companies striking up relationships with Shapeways.
Doesn't matter. I mean,
It does matter.
We print Shapeways parts. We print Shapeways
Right.
parts. And we used to print some of the 123D app parts also, because it's still a small industry. And what's going to happen is there are 3D printers that are always going to exist. But unless this goes into people's everyday life experiences, this is not going to explode. And that's what we need to do. All of us together
My
need to
point
do
is
that.
more that you don't quite have the capital here to get into everybody's daily
exactly.
experience.
You know, and actually that's a concern for us, because our consumer side, the amount of customers we have on the consumer is a humongous number right now. And our worry is, are they going to choke this 3D printer industry, the one who can provide service? So I'm very happy that, Peter is moving as fast as he can on that. But I think it's going to be a lot of demand coming up. And, and then it comes to the first experience. I didn't get my model. It took forever.
Yep.
And this experience didn't work well. So we have to be prepared, we are making sure that out of this, on the software side, from being able to capture the object even with your camera, or being able to design or bring it from a library, the experience will be absolutely flawless on that side. But, when it comes to the other end, we are really dependent on on the manufacturer.
It's an interesting question here. I can't actually read it all, but it says, but what about body scanners? And let me just, I'd like you to talk about, because I've seen it at Autodesk, is sort of scanning as an input mechanism for 3D objects. In other words, it's to create things, having cheap input devices such as scanners.
Yeah.
Talk to that as
Yeah,
well,
okay,
so
sure.
Yeah. So actually, it's a fascinating thing, because there's objects that are very difficult to make in any software, and all of a sudden you have a device that is very affordable and is your pocket camera, pretty much your iPhone, and you take picture and you have a 3-dimensional model, and you are able to bring that from the physical to the digital world. And once it's in the digital world, be able to change it, modify, and we have applications, like 123 Sculpt. So anything that you capture, you can change and modify and output it as well. What I wanted to say is, not everybody's going to create stuff from scratch. People's going to grab from libraries, or they're going to capture with a different device, which will be your, iPhone camera or, a iPad with a camera.
Lesson
embedded.
of clip art, right?
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Philip, on this?
Well, I was just going to say, because we've done quite a lot of work in body scanning, because obviously what we're looking at is customizing things for people a lot of the time, whether it be fashion or sport or medical, I guess. And again, I think we're going to see a huge explosion of that, whether we're capturing on our cameras, from Kinects or in our homes, or we're probably soon going to have depth sensors in our laptops and TVs and things like that. So. We're going to have the capacity to be able to create customized.
The Kinect platform is a step in that direction already, right?
Well, there's bespoke innovations in the next room, and they're the perfect example of scanning body and making prosthetics, medical devices that truly change people's lives. So I would encourage you guys to go talk to them and ask
Actually,
them.
one of the more interesting examples I came across was a scientist once who was, his field was biomechanics, but he worked at crash test dummies. And so, like, if they use cadavers and they have a bad accident, it sounds gross, skull breaks up and they can't repeat the test and see what happens next. If they use, regular mannequins or things, that doesn't give them a true thing. So they were actually printing 3D skulls so they could have the same skull each time in each accident to see what happened. And there were, it was just, a fascinating niche. And I think this is one of both the open source lessons and the lessons about democratization of technology, is it ends up in places where you really would never expect it to be. But so let me ask you, just in closing, kind of each of you, 2 questions. What's a game changer here? What's going to change this whole area in terms of either consumer adoption or the technology? And if you were out in this audience and you were Riley's age or a little bit older, and you kind of said, my future is going to be in 3D printing, what would you be thinking? What's missing? Where do you want to go? Gonzalo, do you want to give a shot at that?
I can tell you, I'm going to tell you on the device itself, what I really wanted to see is an affordable system, that it works well, and the output is equivalent to what we expect from a test-jet printer. Okay. It have that kind of output.
What do you think the price point is? 500?
No.
400?
300 and less.
300, okay.
Yeah. 300 and less.
5 years from now.
Yeah. That's what he said. Others say something else.
Kickstarter says next month. But, okay. What would you be thinking about if you were in the audience? Like, where would you be thinking that I'm going to go work on that device?
Where can I get that device?
Yeah.
There's the question in the audience. Say, if I had the device at my home, this magical device came out of my home, how hard will be to use? And actually, what Rajiv said, some of these 3D printers are very simple. You just press a button and the thing comes out. It's almost like a Star Trek replicator stuff. But the software piece, there's a very complex softwares out there to do that, and there's our stuff. And our stuff, especially in the product line of 123D, is really fabulous stuff, because it's fun to create things. And when I put my son and he started playing with this stuff and develop all this design, all from his imagination, and I say, buddy, now we're going to print it. And it's magical for him.
Yeah. Rajiv, what do you think the big breakthrough might be?
Well,
Same thing?
I'll You asked two things, right?
Right.
I'll give you two things. That's what I feel. Yeah, if you look at the iPad, okay, nobody asks iPad what the price point is. People buy, right? And you've been asking price point here. Before the iPad came on, the tablet market was going nowhere because tablets were kind of cumbersome. People didn't figure out where to use it. What we try to do with the Cube is make it easy, make it intuitive, and make it very accessible, such that even a kid can use it. Once you do that, which is what the iPad did, and the tablet market completely changed after that, which is what we are trying to do with the Cube, is make it easy, accessible, and intuitive. It is not a game about accuracy, speed, price point, surface finish, none of that. Kids like Riley, they don't know this right now. They don't know what 3D printing is. Just giving them a device where you would wake up with an idea and get a part by the end of the day, it's huge for them. And so doing that is extremely important, making extremely accessible, easy to use devices. And second is the experience. You just cannot take, this is a 3D printer, this is a website, this is what you download. It cannot be that way. You have to take the entire content to print process and insert it into the daily lives of people. If you're watching a TV, that whole process should be in it. If you're playing a video game, that process should be in. If you're traveling in a subway, you're buying something on the station, it should be part of that process. Unless that happens, it's not going to explode.
And what would you tell someone in the audience that?
Go buy a printer on Cubify.com.
All right. What matters for your students? You know, in a sense, they're both of this side of this.
Well, I guess I'd liken the machines on the table to the Singer sewing machine, if you like. You know, that was a real game changer. It brought that capability into people's homes. But for me, the difference is with a Singer sewing machine, I can put any material, I can make anything, any shape, any size. And I want a machine that does that because I want to be able to produce something as beautiful as this mass-produced, very low-cost item out of one of those machines. I want color, I want size, and I want to be able to do it at a reasonable price.
And your students, where are they exploring beyond, given these, even whatever level of tools are here today in 3D printing, what kinds of things are they
Come and have a look next door on the table. You'll see some of the things. And they're pushing all the time. But what they're pushing for is that they want to be able to produce something that will stand up against a mass-produced luxury object. Sure, we have to finish things in the same way. Anything that we produce, we have to go through some finishing processes. But there's a cost. There's a huge cost issue in terms of how you can produce at that level.
Okay, very good. Peter, same questions for you. So, what do you see as the game changer here?
If I look back in what we've seen in the last couple of years, I think the most important, where people really get excited in the current market, given that there already are really great tools because they are important, I think materials is where currently people get the most excited about. We recently did a blog post about a new material which is very flexible and soft touch, and people went nuts. The amount of emails we get about certain materials, can you please launch that? They are amazing. And if we do, then they can take off really quickly. So materials, beautiful colors, see-through materials like the cup you're holding, even more precious metals or whatever, depending on the problem, the need you're trying to address, the problem you're trying to solve, different materials make sense. And then, of course, mixing up materials where you have multiple materials in one go, or maybe even introducing electronics. I'm really rooting for that to happen, that you get, devices, you can 3D print devices. Yeah. So materials, production in a sense, and then coupled to that, of course, a reasonable price point. For metals, we're pretty much there. But for plastics, we're nowhere near where people want to be. What we do at shows is we take a lot of products and we don't put prices on. I typically ask, what would you pay? And in plastics, it's wrong. With metals, it's right. So we need to drive down cost. I think that is very, very much important.
Some people are talking about actually recycling the pieces you're making with 3D printing. Is there a front?
That would help.
Can you put the output back in?
With metals, we could. With silver, you send back your silver, melt it again, right? Yeah. So, and the question I would be asking myself if I was in the audience now, this sounds really exciting. How will this be, it's a little bit like the analogy you brought about the computer, right? We first wanted to have a computer and then we figured out what to do with it, and we really didn't know what we are doing with it, what we were going to do. I mean, Facebook, who would have thought of Facebook in the early 90s, whilst now turns out that Facebook is one of the platforms that people spend most time on the web. So how will 3D printing be relevant for each and every one of us a few years down the road? What is the relevant thing that we will be doing with 3D printing? That's what I would be wondering.
How will this be
relevant for me?
Let me ask you a specific question kind of on your business. So in some ways, someone's using the web, they're pressing a button, it goes off to one of your manufacturing distribution centers. Could you see a model that's more like Kinko's or like the photo processing in the drugstore? They had the machines there, you went there, you kind of did something, it was a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more visible, you might have had to come back and pick up your things. Is there any sort of advantage in making this a little bit more visible to consumers?
Well, that's exactly what we actually have done already in Eindhoven, but that's far away from here, a little bit closer to home, New York. We're going to create an experience lab there. And you need a certain size at this moment to be able to bring all these materials to everybody. So our centers need to be at a certain size. But after they're at capacity, as we've done with first in Europe, now in the United States, we will have multiple centers. So, and maybe if it makes sense, and if the technology develops in that way, we can have a 3D printing shapeways center very close to you. Which, by the way, again, is good for the environment because you don't have to haul products around the world, but you just make them right next to you. But let's start with 2 first. That's already a challenge.
Well, good. Well, I want to thank my panelists all for tonight.